Hello and welcome back to the Boat Shed. My name is John and this boat behind me is Antidote. I'm an engineer and a sailor with a dream of fixing up this old boat to go sailing around the world, and I've got a lot of work to do first. Today, for working on Antidote, we are going back to the forward anchor locker. I have some things to share with you there, and we are in a very nice brief weather window, so let's get to work. The last time we were looking at this bulkhead assembly, I was working on the upper forward section and making sure all of my gear would fit through this new opening. So let's pick up there where we left off. Before I install this upper bulkhead, this is the most forward piece, I want to round the inside edge to a 3/8 round over bit because I want to put a layer of glass on the back of this just like I have on the lower piece, and this way they'll match up exactly, and then we'll smush the two together and then finish the round over on the other side and then glass back over this whole thing. That's the hope. We'll see how it works, but for now we're going to start getting ready to glass this over, and we'll start by rounding this over. It's been a few hours since we put the glass down on this bulkhead, and I was able to wrap the inside edge here with the 1708, and it is only a 3/8 radius, so that's pretty tight, but I was able to do it by using some thickened epoxy on the inside. I got it really thick like Vaseline, spread it in there, and then when I pulled the glass around, it actually stuck quite a bit better. I did have to babysit it a little bit, come out every couple of minutes, just make sure it was sticking where I wanted it to. And now it looks like it's done really well. When we get the peel ply off, we'll see. But I wanted to show you, I love when I can get out to the glass, when it's still in this sort of plastic phase, it's not quite fully hardened yet, but the tackiness is gone. The perfect time to cut it with a knife. It saves a bit of grinding time later. I just like doing it that way. It's the following morning, and this piece is looking pretty good. So we're gonna pull the peel ply off, get it all cleaned up, and see how it turned out. Okay, we've confirmed the fit. We like it. It looks good. And now since I'm cutting the vertical sections out of two pieces of wood, I want to get just a rough paper template so I have something to lay on the new sheet of plywood to make a good cut. I don't want to waste a lot of that wood. That's what we're going to do now. This will be the seam of the two pieces. If you flip this one over, it'll complete the shape. And I'm going to put the rabbet in on this board as well at the joint. Just, I guess, because I'm a glutton for punishment. We'll do it in millimeters today for all of you that are watching from overseas or Canada. And I know there's a lot of you out there, so let's get millimeters going today for this one. So, what do we got here? Plywood is 11.7 millimeters. Okay, so we'll set this to like 5.8. All right, here we go. Okay, well that made a big mess. Let's see how it did here. Feels good. Yeah, looks good. I mean, there'll be some epoxy take up in there. I'm happy that we did that. Now, hopefully I left enough so that we can cover that. Looks good. I think I'll do is flip it over and then we'll do the trace out. Very little chance that's staying together, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get lucky. So before I cut this out, the angle on the side of the hull is this, roughly. The reason that I want to cut this out on this angle is to avoid massive gaps along the side. The gap is getting bigger as we come aft. So this block here shows this angle. You can see that as we come up 1/2 inch, it comes over about 3/16. I want to move the line out about 3/16 and then cut it, and then we can shape it with the belt sander really easily, relatively easily. So we'll use this little gauge to mark it off. And that's just on the sides. The top we're going to pretty much cut at the same spot, taking up a little gap here and there. All right, so we're ready to cut this out. Let's give it a shot. Now that all these panels fit just the way we want, I want to pass these holes through and size them as well for the epoxy plugs, and then everything should be ready to go in. Sometimes when you're working on these epoxy plugs, you'll fight with little bubbles that form, and that's probably from stirring them in when you're mixing up the epoxy as well as adding the thickeners. One way to fight these is to use a little bit of heat. This heat gun tends to make the bubbles rise up to the surface, and then you can pop them, or they will sort of pop on their own. If you've been watching these videos in chronological order, you'll know that we've taken a bit of a break from this forward bulkhead. The reason is that I was waiting for some experts to weigh in on my design approach to make sure that I was designing this bulkhead to be watertight-ish as efficiently as possible. I don't want to unnecessarily overbuild it, but I do need to make sure that it can hold back water if it is in fact flooded and it needs to keep the boat afloat. So I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Jim Antrim. Jim is a naval architect with an impressive resume, and he spoke to me on the phone, gave me some of his time, which was really generous, and we talked about the design of this forward bulkhead. So I shared with him some of the pictures, the renderings that I put up on this program before, and we agreed that the extra braces that were possibly called out from a book that I had read were not going to be necessary in this application. We believe that with the 1-inch thick double layer of plywood and then 1708 on both sides of that with a little bit of extra tabbing to the hull and a little extra run out, I'll give you those specs later. This is going to be plenty strong. We're going to go ahead with this now, which is really exciting. So thanks, Jim, for your time. I really appreciate you weighing in, lending your expertise to the project here. That's really generous of you. So thank you so much. We'll put a link to his website down below so you can check out some of the work that he's done. And if you're interested in any kind of yacht design work, he can probably help you with that too. So now we're ready to press on installing this lower bulkhead section. We'll put this in first, and then I think I want to prepare the rest of the interior before I lay in the upper sections of the bulkhead. That's just so that when I go to paint the inside of that bulkhead and all that, I don't have to have someone hold me by my ankles down into the anchor well. I'm going to mark off the tabbing inside the boat so I know how far to paint some new, fresh, unthickened epoxy on this. We'll let that cure up for a little bit, and then we'll glue this into the boat. Here we are ready to glue in this forward bulkhead, and I'm looking again at the surface that I've prepared inside the anchor locker that once I put this in place is going to be a lot harder to access, and I'm just not really happy yet with the finish on this. I've left a little bit of the gel coat behind. My hope is that what is left behind is sticking well to the substrate, and so when I overcoat it, it'll all be sound. But I have some questions about that, as some of it still flicks off rather easily when I abrade it with this little screw or something like that. So I am concerned about getting all of this gel coat off, even though it is a lot of extra work. We're going to get this all the way back down to glass as much as we possibly can. So this 4-inch nylon wire brush has really been my favorite tool for getting that last bit of gel coat off of the substrate. And there's a few areas that I can't quite reach, like right in behind the tabbing where it's a little bit of a deeper recess, and I cannot quite get in there with any of my existing tools. I picked up this nylon wire brush, the 6-inch version. This is really meant to be used on a bench grinder, but we're gonna improvise a little arbor here using a 1/2-inch bolt. Let's put this together, see if we can clean up the rest of that material, and then we'll be all ready to glue this in. All of the surfaces now up at the bow are ready to go. We've wiped down with the 2-rag acetone method, and we've abraded everything beforehand. So really nice clean surfaces ready to glue this forward bulkhead in. Up until now, you've seen me using West 105 epoxy to do all of my epoxy work, and we're changing things up a little bit here. The good folks at AkzoNobel, so that's the parent company for Seahawk, Interlux, and All Grip paints. They're a massive coatings company. They've been around for over 100 years. I've had the privilege of having a few of their reps out here to the project to check out what we're doing, and Dave and Tony have decided to help out the project with some coatings and some structural epoxy. So this is a 5-to-1 low viscosity, low blush epoxy. The physical characteristics, all of the strength numbers and things like that are strikingly similar to any other 5-to-1 epoxy that you can get out there. And the working times are also very similar using different catalysts. We're using the fast because we are a little on the colder side out here today and we want things to cure properly. They also make, slow, ultra slow. We're gonna give this a shot. They've generously given me this sample batch. So let's try it out and see how we like it. And that is, as you can see here, crystal clear. Now this one, I can see is a little more amber colored. And I've noticed that with my West stuff as well, even though it's a brand new can, it is sort of reddish. And it doesn't affect the structural properties at all, none of the mechanical properties, just color. People that do a lot of woodwork like the older Catalyst because it mixes better in with wood tones. So if you've got a really old can lying around and you do some woodworking, maybe you just leave that one aside and get yourself a new one so you can do your color matching better. All right, let's mix up some epoxy, get it onto our part, and then once that starts to set up a bit, we'll come back with some thickened epoxy and glue this into the boat. You may want to consider using a respirator when you're working with epoxy. This is a P100, a 3M version. It doesn't smell very bad working with epoxy, and this is no different, but there are still some vapors in the air. So if you're going to be prolonged exposure or working with this for a long period of time, you might want to consider wearing one of these. It certainly doesn't hurt. While we're waiting for the epoxy to start to kick, we're just gonna prep these little wooden boards. We're gonna screw the bulkhead in through the fiberglass tabbing into these in the back, and these will just help suck everything up, distribute all that thickened epoxy nice and evenly in between the tabbing and the bulkhead. And then we'll cover these in my favorite release film, packing tape, so that they come off nicely when we're all done. And I should just mark these so I know where they go. So this will be port. Let's take these up top and let's check the temperature, see how that epoxy is heating up. Before we do that, I wanted to let you guys know that 2024 has been off to a bit of a crazy start, and that is putting it mildly. Now, thankfully, my wife Bridget is super supportive, and she's been a big help in keeping things organized around here and getting this video edited. So I did want to say a big thank you to her, and if you're appreciating this video, why don't you let her know in the comments down below. Okay, let's get back to it. We are racing some cold weather, which is on the way. It's currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and the end of the week forecast is for as low as 10 degrees, which is crazy because we usually barely get to freezing temps around here this time of year. It's important to work in the proper temps for the epoxy that you're using. So if you're laminating glass especially, you're going to want to make sure your substrate is warm and the epoxy is warm so it'll flow out and saturate the glass nicely. Now, I've installed some space heaters and some fans up at the bow of the boat to move some air around and keep things warm enough out there. So it looks like I've been able to raise the ambient temp inside the boat by about 15 degrees compared to the outside. This is going to help promote a speedy and full cure. If you let the temps drop below the recommended levels, you could experience an unfinished cure or potentially one that is hard but doesn't have the strength characteristics that are advertised. So you really want to make sure you're holding things at the right temperature for at least 24-48 hours. By the looks of things here, the epoxy is starting to get tacky, so let's mix up some colloidal silica thickened epoxy and spread it on with a V-notch trowel so we can glue this lower bulkhead in. We're going to do 6 pumps. Hopefully that's enough to give a nice V-notch trowel to the tabbing, and then also a bit left to fill in the cracks around the sides. There is some gaps, so we'll start with that and see how it goes. This morning I came out a little bit early and checked on the plywood bulkhead. It's looking really good. The cure is coming along nicely, and I just quickly, with soap and water, washed out any potential blush. Now we're gonna go back in and grind down any of that extra squeeze out and get it all nicely smooth, ready for laying in some new glass. Grinding out all this squeeze out was a messy task, and I won't subject you to too much of that, but once we were finished, we were able to put in a little fillet of epoxy just to help the glass conform to this tight bend. And for that, I just used a regular old mixing stick or a tongue depressor, as you may know it, and this matches nicely with the curve of my fin roller, so this is going to work great. Okay, that's all looking really good. So we're going to get 2 pieces of glass cut up now to tab in at the very bottom of the anchor locker, and we might also take care of the tabbing of the sides today. All right, so those 2 parts will tab into the boat. We're just gonna take these up now and get these fit properly. We will wet them out down here and then take them to the boat once we're ready. Okay, we're ready to put the glass in now up at the bow. One thing that I've been noticing as I've been working is that I've been mixing up the epoxy kind of as I need it. I do 5 or 6 pumps. I kind of take a guess at how much I need. Oh, I need a bit more, add a bit more. And it's been working out just fine, although sometimes I do get a little bit of a lean mix, and then after I pull the peel ply away, there's these little gaps left behind. And from the research I've done, it looks like 1 fluid ounce of epoxy to 1 weight ounce. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. We'll get out our little scale here, and our 2 pieces of glass come in at just between 7 and 8 ounces. You get about 3/4 of an ounce out of each pump, so I think that's 10 or 11 pumps total, and that should wet out all that glass. We'll wet it out here on the bench and take it up. All right, that's got all of our glass installed. The peel ply is on there. Now we just need to make sure the temperatures stay up high enough so that it'll get to a full cure. It is down to 32 degrees outside, so we are below our recommended temperature window, but I've been able to keep the heat inside the boat with some space heaters and some fans moving the air around. And I'm keeping an eye on it with my IR gun. And I also have this little tool here. This is my FLIR IR camera, and this does a really cool job of letting you actually see the thermal imaging of whatever you're looking at. So from outside the boat, I can measure the temps here, and you can clearly see where the bulkheads in the boat are. You can see the new forward lower bulkhead that we've glued in and the temperature disparity between the 2 sides. This is because I'm running the heater and actually blowing the hot air on the side with the glass that I just laminated to try to keep that nice and warm. So this is a cool way for me to check on the temperatures. These are really handy little tools, plugs right into your phone and gives you a great image, and obviously you can record with it too, so really handy stuff. So I did find that mixing the epoxy based on the weight of the glass was super helpful in making sure that I get the right amount measured out. I got full saturation, including the peel ply without any waste, so it worked out really well. It takes a little bit of the pressure off, you're not thinking about it, and you also save some time going back and forth as you need to mix more epoxy up. So that was a real great solution, and I think we'll continue to do that. It looks like things are going to start warming up again next week, and that's great. We might get back to preparing the bow. We have some products here from AkzoNobel that are going to make that bilge and that anchor locker look super splendid and be totally watertight. So stick around, we're going to explore those products. Huge thanks again to the folks at AkzoNobel for helping out this project. Really couldn't do it without you guys. And along those same lines, I'd like to thank all the folks on Patreon that really do help make this project a possibility. We have some new Patreons to thank this week. Darren and Vicky are out in Australia, and they have a really cool boat called Woolloomooloo. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And it was built in Saint-Tropez in the late 70s. Really cool boat. They've done a lot of work on it, and you can go check them out on Instagram. We'll put their handle down below. And of course, an extra big thanks to the folks whose names are appearing on the screen. There are a lot of really interesting projects here on the go, so when you come back next time, we'll be working on something interesting, I'm sure. And if you are new to the project and you would like to get caught up from the very beginning, there's a playlist here that you can check out. If you'd like to subscribe for more of this content, that button is right here. Really excited to see you guys in the next one. Till then.
Is it just me or is it getting hot in here? Actually, this is my good side. Does my hair look okay?